All right.
All right. I'm Matthew. I'm powerless over alcohol, and I believe I had said that I was sitting in there, and I got an eye roll, and then I was asked to speak, and so I thought, for very quickly, I would just elucidate on what that means to me. When I say I'm powerless over alcohol, that means that I'm powerless over even the thought of alcohol, and I know that if I gave myself permission to have a shot of scotch on my 100th birthday, the only thing I would do, for the next 40 so years would be to obsess over that. And that means that I am powerless over alcohol, not just the physical aspect, but even the enablement of it. And that's even more than I would consider being a drunk for me, because I can't even tempt the thought. But we hear the promises mentioned often. I do. And Nathan mentioned them, and he said they came true. And he even had an example. I am going to go through, I did this once off the cuff, and I'm going to now have a few notes go through what the promises and how they came true for me literally. I pretty much where I was and what that event was when I knew when these promises came true. So one is we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. Now, when I first came in, I went to Dawn Patrol pretty much every day, and after 6 months, I was the chair. And one of my first times I was in the preamble, it said that we will go around and introduce ourselves, and I'm a take charge kind of person, and I thought that was too ambiguous. And I said, we will go around and introduce ourselves in a clockwise manner. And there was a woman there who immediately says, we'll introduce ourselves any damn way we please. And that right then and there, I was freed. I realized I had heard this enough, I'd been around long enough, that I did not have to control the world. I wasn't in charge. And that's when that broke. That started me realizing that I did not have to control everything, that things could happen and they would do their own thing, and I could be okay with that. I didn't have to. And that was a great moment of freedom, because my whole life I thought I had to be in control or be controlled. It was going to be one or the other. And when she said that right there, that freed me of the need to do that. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. I was at Fremont Hall, and people were sharing, and there was a woman in a motorcycle outfit, and I wasn't really paying too much attention, except that I started to hear her story, and she gave this horrific recant of what she did to her kids and just her life and all these things. And then she said, but I realized I can't have a better future. I can't make a better past. And again, it struck me that I had been doing that my whole life. That whatever my past was, I wanted to make it better. I wanted to make it different. I wanted to change it, amplify it, whatever and I realized that there's only one way I can do that, and I can lie. Because I can't change the past, but I can lie about it. And when I lie about it, it makes me feel bad, because I don't like being a liar. But when I change the past, I am a liar. So the only way to move forward was to have a better future, was to stop trying to have a better past. And again, that was the crucial moment. That was a defining moment where I was very clear of what I had been doing. And again, my whole life. and I could change, that I could stop trying to have a better past and stop lying about it, and I would feel better. And I knew that that would work. Um, we will comprehend the word serenity. I was probably 2 or 3 years into my sobriety, and I was doing something that I'd always wanted to do, and for various reasons never did, which was get a pilot's license. And I'd gone through the process, and I was done with my check ride, and I'm sitting across the table from the check pilot, and he shakes my hand, and he says, "Congratulations, you're a pilot." It's like, great, that's something I've wanted to do since I can remember. And I got up from the table, and I felt great, and I walked across the little room, and I walked out the door, and when I got out the door, I felt like crap. And I stopped. This time, I've been around a few years. I stopped, and I stood outside, and I said, "What is going on?" And again, it struck me. What I had done in those 20 steps was start telling myself all the things I wasn't. I wasn't an instrument pilot. I wasn't a multi-engine pilot. I wasn't a jet pilot. And dang it, I wasn't an astronaut. And really, and I just quickly, and I realized that I was the bottom feeding, lowest rung of the ladder. I was just this stupid private pilot, a nothing. I think that was the first time, though, that I had enough sanity and enough sobriety to actually recognize what was going on. And again, I went, holy cow, I do this my whole life. No wonder I want to go drink, even when I'm successful, because I do this subconsciously. I went from being elated to just bottom feeder in 20 steps. I did something smart, though, and it is a day-at-a-time program, and I realized that I couldn't just stop doing that. But what I did do was I gave myself permission to be happy about my accomplishment for one day. I said, I'm going to be happy about this. This is an accomplishment. I'm going to be, content with myself for doing this for one day. And tomorrow I can feel like crap, but I'm going to take, I'm just going to at least give myself this, because normally I would have headed off and had the drink over that. That started me understanding what serenity was, of being comfortable with what was and not having to change it or place myself in relation to anything else. So let's see. 3. Here it is. 4. I didn't coordinate this with Nathan. 4. We will know peace. I also have a convertible, and one day I was driving over the West Seattle Bridge, and it was a beautiful day, and the top was down, and I got to the top of the bridge, and I realized that I was comfortable. I was just comfortable. There was no angst. I wasn't really worried about anything, even though things are going on in life. And I knew that was a feeling I had never really experienced. And if I did, I was very uncomfortable with it usually, because it usually meant something was wrong. I didn't know. And again, I was able to accept that things were just okay, and that I just felt good. I didn't feel elated, which I often had felt, and I just felt comfortable. And there was nothing in my head that was weighing down on me, that was worrying me, that was challenging me, that I was scared about. I was like, wow, this is new. I don't experience that very often, even today. It's an unusual feeling to get that, but it does happen, and I can accept it and be appreciative when that happens. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experiences can benefit others. I I was asked to be a speaker a while ago, and what I spoke about was childhood thoughts of suicide, long before I ever started drinking, and some experiences I had with that, and then how I worked through that in the program. And one person came up to me and said, "I've never heard anybody speak about that." He's been around the program. He said, "I've been around the program a long time, and I have never heard anyone." And he said, "That's exactly how I feel." And he had never heard anyone say that. I was not sure about speaking about that, but it's what seemed to be the right thing to do. It addressed, well, we don't need, and so, my experience can benefit one person, maybe someone else. That was a defining moment when, people actually shunned me. I saw some people who they did not want to talk to me after that. It was maybe just the wrong, bad subject. But one person did, and said it really spoke to him, and he was heartened by that. Let's see. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. I don't know if I've ever completely felt useless. I've always tried to make myself useful, but I definitely had a lot of self-pity. Always. One time years ago, a friend of mine said, "Hey, you haven't lived with your dad for a long time. Can you stop blaming him for all your problems?" But, yeah, okay, I can do that, but I'll blame someone else. I was at my men's group, and there was a guy there, he was a wet brain drunk, a guy named Jack. I don't know, he's long dead now, who was there, and he reeked of beer. And I was fairly new, and it really bothered me. And after the meeting, we walked out, and I said to my sponsor, I said, "Man, that's really disturbing, and it really bothers me." And, you pick a sponsor that has what you want. And he turned around, and he was pissed. And he turns around and he goes, "He's here for you. You don't get to be upset." And again, and I went, "Oh, yeah, I'm kind of full of myself." And yes, he's there for me. And it took that angry, it took that response to elicit my change. And, I heard Jack speak other times, and he was there for me. He really reached me. But that was a change I started to realize when I would be pissy or upset or caustic or criticizing, of wait, this is just all this self-pity. And maybe that they're here for me, not, that it's all about me. And I don't get to always think it is about me. Let's see. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Again, I was at my men's meeting, and somebody was speaking who I thought was a pretentious twat, and who said nothing but sugary pap. And I had a bit of contempt for what this person was sharing, and I also thought he was not genuine. And I sat there, and it wasn't the first time I'd heard this person speak, and I had the same response. Only this time, when the meeting ended, we're walking out, there was a few people who got up and came up to him and told him how much that really meant to them. And that he really spoke to them, and that he had a message that was meaningful. And, I realized what an asshole I was. I hadn't said anything to him. I had never said anything about it, but I realized that I was sitting there in judgment of someone who had meaning to other people. Um, and that made me change my behavior because it was so strong. It struck me so much that I think maybe for the first time I realized that other people actually had something to say that was meaningful, and it wasn't just me that always was doing that. And I started to listen more. And I even listened to this guy. I don't know if he ever had anything meaningful to say to me, but I did realize that other people did have meaningful things to say, and maybe I should listen to them instead of just writing them off, based on my own judgment. 8, self-seeking will slip away. Well, I got plenty of time. When I was actively drinking, I used to hang out at a tavern all the time, and it was a night like this. It was pouring down rain. It was wet. It was cold, and this woman came in, and her car had broken down on the freeway, just like it's just up down the off ramp. And I got in. I went out there, and I changed her tire on the side of the freeway in the pouring down rain. And when I was all done with that, and she was on her way, I went back to the tavern, and I said, I kind of counted up my karma points, or I don't know if they're coins or bills or check marks or whatever, however they're enunciated. But and I remember thinking, like, I get like a week of staying out and drinking away from the family because I'm such a good guy. I did such a good thing that I deserve. Like, I'm going to use that goodness because I get to use it up. And basically balance my actions for other people against this good deed I did. But I'm also humble because I didn't tell anybody, right? I didn't ask anything from her, and I didn't tell anybody I did this, but I did counter it up. I don't. There's a saying that says, "Do good things and tell no one," and I try to practice that. And there was a time when there was a community meeting, and someone mentioned that this path had been cleared and all cleaned up and so on. And I just thought, and I didn't say anything because I had gone out and done that. I realized it needed to be done. And I was kind of like, not only do I expect nothing for it, but I'm not telling anyone. This is the least concrete one because I don't know other ways to say or say how that has come true. Because I don't know if ambition is self-seeking. I have a heck of a lot of that. But I do try and include other people in actions and to be a person among persons, especially. And I was with an outfit, and I was standing there. We were all getting counted in the morning. It's the Army. And it was the first time in my life I was standing there in the dark, and I just felt like I'm just a person. I am just a person among many. I'm not special. And it was so unique. It kind of shocked me because it just kind of came out of the blue. So maybe that is self-seeking slipping away. Our whole outlook, our whole attitude and outlook on life will change. Okay, this is really easy. I'm kind of I'm an uneducated engineer. I never went to college. But I have got to experience things that are almost identical to what I did when I was drinking, and apply a different method of how to approach it. The first one was my business got sued by one of my competitors after when I was sober, and my business was also sued by one of my customers when I was drinking. And at that point, I obsessed. It completely occupied my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about this and how I was going to fight it, and on and on and on. Uh, and then this time, it went from being an obsession to a thing that was happening that really wasn't any more or less important than anything else. And it was just something to get through. And I fought it. I believed I was right. I mean, uh, but it didn't take over my life. And it was only because I was practicing the principles and living a different way. And I was able to just compare, like take event A and event A and go, okay, what changed? Well, my attitude changed, and this is entirely different. Um, I I had a business that for a long time that I started up, uh, and I went through that as a drunk, and I am now a partner in another business where it's an entrepreneurial business. It's the same kind of thing. There's a lot of stress. There's the money. There's all the issues that come with that. But it's completely different experience. And the only change is that I'm applying the principles, and I have a completely different approach to it. And the outcome is night and day. It's completely different. Um, I was in the military when I was drinking. In fact, I stepped off a bus in San Diego to go to Navy boot camp drunk. And I can still remember the chief just gave me this. I could still see him. He just went, "God." And that was many people's response to me was like, God, another one. And but I found a home in the Navy. That was a paradise for my behavior for quite a few years. But I went through it as a drunk. I was really good at what I did, but I wasn't a very good sailor. And when I left, no one was really sorry to see me go. I walked out the door, and that was that. And I had an opportunity to go back in the Washington National Guard a while ago, and after I'd been in the program for a while, and it was an entirely different experience. Now, the military was exactly the same. I would describe it as, you've divorced your wife, and you go back and you get remarried, and that person is exactly the same, but my attitude and how I approached it was completely different, and the outcome was completely different. The program says that you'll get to be the person you always wanted to be, and I got to be a person in a very and it's a very measured way in the military, the person that I wanted to be and act the way I wanted to be, and the outcome was, again, it was completely different. I left, and a lot of people were genuinely sorry to see me go, and that meant a lot. I was able to basically do that and see what it meant to be that person, and to get the feedback. So, that's my whole attitude and outlook on life has changed, and it's not only that, my marriage, again, it's a marriage filled with not strife and just not getting along, to one where I'm much more open. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. My response to being around people who I looked up to and respected was to dislike them. It was the only way I could deal with how I felt. And the more closer I was, and the more I looked up to them, the more I tried to hold them in contempt. It was some kind of mechanism of like inferiority. I'm not a psychologist. Doesn't really matter. But I was at a meeting for breakfast with a bunch of people who were in my flying club, and one of the people who I really looked up to, I made an amends to, because I felt that I had said something inappropriate, and he said, "Oh, no, that wasn't appropriate. In fact, he said the other guy talking about it, he says they actually thought that was some good insight, and I just went, and I went, oh, okay." Because I've been kind of walking around with this for a couple of weeks and like really dreading, this person who I really looked up to, And then he didn't even think about it. And I just walked away. And again, I went, I don't know what I know. Like this whole fear of people and everything, it's all in my head because what I thought was not what happened at all. But I had interpreted it through my own, and and I just went, okay, I will take that into consideration. And the fear has not really ever left me. That's some kind of ingrained response. But I do know now that that fear isn't reality, and that maybe things are going on that I have to make amends for. But how I see that is not reality, and I just shouldn't try and interpret it one way or the other. And that that has given me a lot of solace and a lot of ease being around just other people. And I don't know, economic insecurity. I was always a striver. I always took every job. I don't think I was ever too concerned, uh, except when I realized that I've been working for myself for 30 years and didn't have a pension, and that just trying hard wasn't really going to be great. So, but I've never been too worried about the economic insecurity. I don't. Will intuitively know how to handle situations with use to baffle us. That um, one of the things I do is I just shut up. And I used to think I had to have a solution for everything, and I realized that the intuitive solution almost all the time is no solution. That I have no solution. I should just shut up. Maybe I should listen to people, but I really don't have one. The other way I approach that is, again, I can't be intuitive often, but I often will stop myself with my wife, and there's some situations, it doesn't have to be bad, and I just go, what would a caring, loving, thoughtful husband do? And I have to put myself into that frame of mind because it really doesn't come naturally. But I do that, and I go, oh, well, that person would do this, and I try to do that, or I take suggestions. I was in Home Depot, and the guy asked me, how's it going? And I made some snarky remark like, well, you could make my wife love me more. Like, how could I help you? Yeah, it's just some off the cuff. And he just turns right around and he goes, why don't you write her a sonnet? and I thought, I'm going to be a smart guy. I said, well, that's a particular pentabular. And he's like, oh, I said, okay. And then I went on my way, and I went, I'm going to write a sonnet. because that's the it's not the intuition of what to do, but maybe the intuition to listen to someone else who seems to know what to do. She framed it. But that's, if I don't have the intuition, and if I'm open, maybe it's provided for me. Oh, a minute and a half. Okay. We'll suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Okay. This goes back to the beginning. My life was out of control. I was ready to leave my family and drink myself to death. And I knew that I had no ideas left. I'd tried everything. Nothing was going to work. And on a Monday, I was driving across the First Avenue South Bridge, and I said to a God who I did not like and did not respect and thought was full of it because of other experiences. But I was so desperate. I just said, if there's a way out of this, I'll take it. Period. Wednesday, I was hanging out at the bar with my buddies, having a few drinks, and the thought came into my head that I should go to AA. I was thinking, okay. And as they said, boy, you just got up and walked out. That's what I did. I got it, walked out, and I found, I looked up a meeting, and I went into the basement of this hospital. At the very end of the meeting, I walked through the door, and a great weight was lifted from me. And I knew that was my answer. I knew 100% that I had asked for a way out, and this was it. And some woman was talking about hiding bottles around, and then the meeting ended, and they said their thing, and they held hands. And I said to a guy, like, so how does this work? And he handed me a schedule book with his number in it, and I walked out. I don't know. I don't need to call it God or a higher power, but that I knew that I had asked something other than me for a way out of something that I did not know how to fix and was going to destroy everything. And I was given an answer. How else? And that stayed with me today. If I ever question it, all I have to do is go, yeah, I don't think that was some kind of fluke. And I think that was, I still have one answer, and it's the one I was given. And I don't know if I'd ever be given another, but I'm never going to ask for one. That was a pretty darn good one. So with that, there's your 12 promises.